fastest way to learn a new language is a bit counterintuitive to what we think and what we do when it comes to not just language learning, but really learning just about anything. And the reason it's counterintuitive is that we tend to want to do things that will immediately move us closer toward our goals or appear to move us closer to those goals. So these quick wins in language learning, and while you can monitor your progress and you can see progress as the days and weeks and months progress, ultimately what is going to be the fastest way to fluency is not going to be the same thing that is the fastest way to a quick result. So for language learning, the fastest way to actually achieve fluency is a consistent progress. It's a consistent process and progress over years, over a year, 2 years. You start to kind of get a little bit into it, and then 3 years, 4 years, even 5 years, being consistent throughout those years. Now that is actually going to be a faster way toward fluency if you are practicing each day, give or take, and not necessarily long hours on those days. Even if you practice only a few hours a week, but you do that for, say, 5 years, that progress, if you're doing that consistently, is going to be faster than spending, say, 6 to 8 hours a day for 3 months. You might see more in those 3 months. You might feel like, oh man, I really learned a lot. But likely what's going to happen is you are going to have an immersion within that experience, especially if you are, say, studying in a country that speaks that language. You go to a language school and you're learning in that environment. So you're practicing, in school. You have long days, 6 to 8 hours usually. The days, at least when I did that type of program, it was 4 to 5 hours, I believe, in the school. And then immersion at home, and that definitely does work. That definitely does move you toward fluency, and that type of intensive program where you're living there, that is a fast way to achieve that. But if you're doing a short-term program like that, the reason that can actually slow you down is if you go do that program like I did, a 4-week program, and then return and then do another program of some kind because you finished a program. Now it's time to continue studying on your own. Well, now the situation that you have is that you have been in this program that is short, right? 4 weeks, 5 weeks, basically anything that's just a few months, anything less than 6 months, let's say. And when you have that kind of program and then you move out of it, well, now you have to figure out where you left off. And this takes time. This takes time to assess where you are and what you need, and if the shorter the program, the more work it's going to be to assess where you are and then to continue moving forward toward your goals. Whereas if you just started a program, say a university program where you commit to 4 years and you're studying that language, well, if you make slow and steady progress toward this over those 4 years, that is going to take that many years, but the hours that you put in over those 4 years is not quite as many hours because they are spread out over those years. And like I said, maybe a few hours a week. If you're doing a full program like that, it's going to gradually increase the amount of hours that you are putting into that language each year. But it will be consistent and it will be the same program. And what this prevents you from doing, what this saves you from doing, is having to go through a short program, like say that 4-week program, and then having to come back and say, okay, now I'm going back into, let's say, this university program, but it was a different system, a different country, different system, different school system, and now I have to figure out, okay, where am I? Well, it's unlikely that you're going to go straight from one program into another and that they are going to be that the second one you go into is going to begin right where the other one left off. That is practically impossible. And so what you'll end up doing is either beginning in that new program at a level that is higher, and then you have to fill in that gap between where you left off and where you're going, or you'll go in a little bit lower, and then you'll have time reviewing, which is not bad. It's always good to review. It's always the safe bet to go a little bit lower and review, and that has been my approach. But again, that's taking off some of that time now, whereas if you would have just gone straight into that program, you would be progressing at a consistent rate, a consistently increasing rate throughout your time with that program. But what if I go into this intensive program and then I learn all of these different skills, I learn and I improve so much? Well, again, that's amazing to have that progress, and you definitely will learn a lot, but unless you are committing to a longer length program, there are always going to be the drawbacks of that, like what I mentioned here. And those type of programs are really, really, really good, really useful if you commit to a longer amount of time. Because the purpose of this lesson here is that the fastest way to learn a language, okay, so our purpose here is to understand that learning a language quickly isn't about getting the information immediately. It's about delaying results so that you can reach the end goal more quickly. It's about being okay with not being able to communicate in your language, not being able to have conversation in your first semester of studying that language, because you are practicing and learning the foundations, and you know that this is paving the way to fluency. It is being okay with that and having a goal with a clearly defined path and following that. And this is where we sometimes will shift toward these quick wins, like, oh, I just started learning Chinese yesterday and now I can say all these phrases. Okay, well, cool. Yes, you can say these phrases, but can you actually communicate? Can you actually understand? Because fluency isn't about remembering and producing. Fluency is about being able to speak automatically. It's about knowing the language so well that it is a part of you, that it is no longer something that you say, oh, I'm learning this language, or one day I'm going to speak this language. Fluency is, I am a Spanish speaker, I am an English speaker, I am fluent in these languages. And it doesn't mean that you're done. It doesn't mean that the learning is over. It means that you now are a speaker of that language. That language is a part of you, and you are able to communicate with its speakers, with its writers, and use that language. And to get there isn't a matter of learn, apply, learn, apply, learn, apply. It's a matter of learning long term and, practicing, applying. Like, you can practice conversations at the beginner level, like structured conversations, and that is definitely good practice, but you'll likely not be able to go out in public and have like a conversation with someone even at the beginner level, because it's not structured in real life like that. It's not scripted like you practice in a classroom, but that's okay, because those are essentially your training wheels for the language. Using those scripts, using grammar structures, practicing conjugations, practicing understanding different verbs and nouns and adjectives in that language, and how to use all of that. Those are practice. Those are your training wheels for learning the language. And then once you get into, say, 4th or 5th year of learning a language, and it takes this long either way, right? It takes this long, like maybe 3 years, but really on the 4 to 5 year side, I would say. And it takes this long to develop fluency in a language, even if you practice all the time, because it takes this long for the information to process through your brain, for it to get into that long-term memory, for it to become a part of you. And there's just no shortcut to that, because you can practice and repeat, but all you're doing is working with your short-term memory when you do that. And the way that you develop fluency is by that language being in your brain for so long, that language being in you for so long, and having that experience and exposure, and that experience not just with studying, but with using it and with making mistakes and developing that comfort level with it. And that can only develop with time. And so part of the reason that it is faster to learn what is apparently the slower way by focusing on, say, a 4-year program, is because it's going to take you that many years regardless to develop fluency. So if you keep that in mind, if you keep in mind, okay, I'm in this for the long haul, and I'm going to make my progress over the years, it's faster because you're no longer wasting time with all of those quick win approaches. Because although they seem faster, they are just that. They are wasting your time, because you are practicing, repeating, and practicing and repeating, and it's a false sense of growth and learning. So when you focus on those longer term programs, that is when you see the real progress. But it is a mindset shift that we have to make that says, okay, I know that these short-term programs, these quick wins, are not actually bringing me closer to my goals, even though I might feel like I am in the moment. And I know that when I see my progress, when I look at it from this month to a few months from now or a few months ago, and I can see a clear progress, I know that this path that I'm on, this longer path, is working, and that it is producing my goals, my desired results. Then we can prove to ourselves, we can keep ourselves on this path because we see that it works. But it is very, very, very difficult for a lot of people to wrap their heads around because of not being able to have that immediate feedback. And that is why it can be really valuable to work with a teacher, to work with a tutor, a language partner, anything. And that way you have some kind of external feedback, like, hey, you are doing well in this, you are doing this, like you can see this, and you can get some feedback, but then you are still focused on your fluency, those long-term goals. And that is the fastest way to fluency. The fastest way to learn a language, it is to develop a consistent study plan, a consistent process over the years, and to follow that as much as possible, and to resist the urge to give into those quick wins and those immediate results that ultimately slow down your progress by faking your brain into thinking that you are becoming fluent in a day or a month, and using that time instead to practice over those years, and then to take breaks in between your study sessions over those years, and to allow that time to work in its own way. Because not only does spreading out that work over years develop fluency over fewer hours and like more productive hours, but the time in between an hour study session one day and an hour study session the next day or 2 days from then is valuable as well. It gives your brain time to process that information, and you learn more than if you were to do a long study session and then a longer break and then a long study session. So that time itself, that rest period, now becomes part of your learning process. And it's so cool because now you're no longer grinding, you're using time to your advantage by having shorter amounts of intensive, really productive studying, and having rest time instead of having to just run yourself, just run constantly. You're now really maximizing and utilizing that time. Alright, well that is it for today, and I will see you guys back here on next Tuesday with another video. And of course, make sure to check out the vlog post that goes along with this video. It is linked down in that description, and I will see you over there on the blog and back here next Tuesday. Bye guys!